Hello, my fellow Lonely Trollopes. I'm here with chapters 21 to 40 of The Way We Live Now by Anthony Trollope, which is all a part of Steve Donoghue's A Lonely Trollope read-along, where in the starting in March, we're reading standalone Trollopes for the year. Starting off with The Way We Live Now, which was published in 1875 and is sort of set. It seems like in the years leading up to kind of 1873, where there's a lot of financial scandals, the Great Panic of 1873. Steve hasn't filmed his video. I'm filming this on a Monday. Steve is all okay and good, and will be back with us with lots of good insights on this particular section of the Trollope. I figured I'd just go ahead, give you my thoughts and impressions right now. I love kind of going through this little chunks at a time because they are such big books. This actually, I'm listening to the LibriVox and Gutenberg, but I love having a little cover to hold up and wave at the camera. It gives me great comfort. So yes, let's go in. Let's follow the way we live now as they lived then in the 1870s. This very time where greed, for a better word, is good as long as you succeed and you're magnificent. And then you're someone like Melmoth, who gets a very shady kind of financial dealer, but has been completely accepted into London society, upper reaches of London society. We're talking like, the lords and ladies and stuff like that, and is indeed sucked in a bunch of these young people, Felix Cadbury, and all the Lord Nidderdale and a bunch of like kind of young callow folks, and put them all at the kind of on the head of this railroad scheme. But it's interesting watching everybody negotiating this, the certain amount of either desperation or dissipation. I mean, a lot of at the very beginning of this, we do get the kind of the young guys gambling, and it's like that seems to be basically their life, as they go to this bear garden and they play cards all night long and gamble and have lots of IOUs. And of course, there's the ones that just like, they're never going to pay off their debts. And so, there's those guys, which I have a limited amount of interest in. We get a good introduction to Miss Hurdle in this thing, which is this woman from the States who has followed Paul Montague back. Paul Montague, who had kind of gone to the States, has sunk like £6,000 into kind of business there in San Francisco, and that's why he has a connection to this whole railway stuff. But there seems to have been a thing where, Paul has like, oh, I'm away from England, so I'm going to kind of dally with a Native American in this case, and kind of take her up and maybe make promises to her. There's also the implication that she sort of attached herself to him, indeed has followed him back to England, saying, aren't you going to make me an honest woman? Are you going to marry me? And he's like, I don't want anything to do with you. And indeed, you find out later he's hired a detective to sort of investigate her, to kind of get info on. And in the course of these chapters, we find out that there was a woman like that who seems to have fought a duel with her husband. She's actually is married, and maybe didn't kill him, but definitely shot him. And Paul's got this like, well, maybe if she shot her first husband, a gentleman shouldn't consider being her second husband, which is a good thought. But Paul is not like really a very strong character. He also, in these chapters, tries to stand up to Melmoth and kind of like, tries to make a nuisance of himself at the board. Like, we should actually know, as people who are sitting on this board, we should actually try and find out what are the dealings of this company, that it's not all bullshit. And of course, the other lords are all the other dudes on this thing are like, oh, we don't care as long as the money's coming in, not really thinking about the fact that when all this goes sour, they are going to be left holding the sack, and are going to have a certain amount of responsibility as directors on a board for like, well, why didn't you find out for other people, investors, that all this was nonsense? In these sections, we also get Ruby Ruggles, which I love the name Ruby Ruggles. It sounds like it should be like a lady reporter from the 1920s. I'm Ruby Ruggles, see, and Ruby Ruggles, see, but no, she is this very kind of she is the the underclass woman who should probably get married to John Crumb, solid John Crumb, who's not very verbal and indeed brings a baker, Joe Mixit, along to actually kind of be his voice. And in the whole kind of what might be supposed to be the proposal, it's Joe Mixit who says everything, and John Crumb's like, yup. It's kind of like it's really hilarious. But Ruby's got her heart set on Felix Caribby, who's just, he's one of these things. He's of course supposedly going to be he's supposedly trying to get hooked up with Marie Melmont, who is the only heir for Auguste Melmont's supposed fortune, but his lovemaking is just terrible. His wooing is just terrible. And when Marie Melmont writes him a letter, he's just like, ugh, what an ass, what a silly ass. He's like, he's got no time for this. And even with Ruby Ruggles, it's like, I don't have to put too much effort in it with Ruby, and I can kind of get the hugging and kissing I want or whatever. But, and of course, Ruby gets kind of abused by her grandfather and leaves and ends up as working for the woman who's the landlady to Miss Hurdle. So we're getting kind of connections there. Yes, Paul tries to make a stink at the board meeting. Melmont is like immediately, first he tries to cow him, and then he's like, okay, I'll bribe him. It's like, you can, we'll give you extra money, or here's some tickets to the grand party, the party of the season, it seems, of this thing. But and indeed at the end he's like, well, we can just give you your 6,000 back, or I'll get it to you sometime at the end of the month. It's like, I'm sure there's always the end of the month. There's always, a little bit later we'll get that to you. Sorry, you wanted money for your shares, Felix? I'm sorry, that's on the 20th. And today's the 21st. You have to wait a month. It's like surprising that Melmont he's always like, the check's in the mail kind of a guy, except on a bigger scale. And of course, he's on such a big scale that people have bought the lie, and all his credit is great. He is spending super lavishly. He is doing the most gigantic party. Is going to be up for being an MP, and has decided to go with the Conservatives because that's probably where he can suck more money from, all these lords and baronets and all that and such stuff. So it's really kind of, it's this financial house of cards. You have weak people who just won't ask the questions, or don't want to ask the questions. There's a striking scene in here of the gambling with the young men. They is it Felix, or I can't remember, Paul, I think someone notices that Miles Grendel is cheating. He's pulling out aces from his sleeves, but no one wants to talk about it because it'll cause unpleasantness. And even like the person who notices, it's like, well, I'll be the only one, and everyone else will be kind of against me, which is sort of a really good microcosm for the rot of this society. It's like nobody is strong enough to kind of stand up to say this is wrong, and then you can see that they're not dumb in that sense of like, this is a society where if you said you did stand up and say this is wrong, people would just be like, boy, what an unpleasant person. Like, they're making such a fuss. Like, go away. They wouldn't get rewarded for it. No one would act on it either. It is one of these stories though, that I guess I'm hoping for Melmont to actually kind of step up in this, be much more of a character, because the characters are the slightly good characters are weak, or there's someone like a Roger Carberry who is just, he's sort of off on the sidelines. He's living in the countryside, so he's not really a part of the story. So he doesn't have much to say. So definitely Miss Hurdle and Melmont are things. John Crumb has been stated as a guy who, if he thought the woman he loved, he probably was being kind of harmed by another man, he would probably give him a good whacking. So I think that might be subtle setup that Felix might be in trouble here. He might get a good sound thrashing, as they say. So yeah. So I'm enjoying these 20 chapters. I feel like we're starting to gear up. Hopefully, kind of gearing up. Trollope is all about kind of getting everything into place. we do have some like lovely scenes. Like I love the stuff with Mr. Brown, editor of one of the papers. I think it's the Morning Literary. I can't remember what it is. But proposing to Miss Lady Carberry, and sure, like no, I'm not gonna do it. He meets Felix coming in drunkenly at the end of his night, and suddenly he's like, oh crap, if I marry her, that is going to be my son-in-law, which really should give him pause. And indeed, Miss Carberry does in this stuff, lets him off the hook. He says like, oh no, well, let's just be friends, And he's like, oh yeah, maybe that's good. But then he started, no, it's like the lady is getting one up on me, but she promises she's not going to say anything. But it's like, you can't help but think, why would you want to marry into a family that had Felix attached to it? Because all he is going to be is a leech and a sponge and a major headache. I mean, you'd have to really love Lady Carberry to do it. And I mean, it's one of these kind of middle-aged love things. Like, we would make a good pairing, but you'd think he would have more sense to kind of go, do I want to have anything to do with Felix at all? Because he is running down both Lady Carberry and his sister, and basically dragging them into ruin, which is classic Trollope, where you have these annoying young men who just kind of bluster through everything and seem to get away scot-free. We'll see if he gets away scot-free in this tale. All right, more videos later.